and Morgan. And today we are going to be having a conversation specifically about launching startups. And Tom and Morgan both are co founders basically in a startup from a long time ago. Would that be a good way to describe it? There's like about six or seven who came together to launch it. Is that accurate?
That's correct. Goes back to about 2018 or 2019.
Yeah. And Morgan, how old are you now?
I am now 22. When I started this project and started hearing about it, launching my own project at the same time, from the same coffee and concepts, I was 15.
Okay. So you're 15. And Tom, how old are you now?
On the other side of the bridge, give me 4 days and I'll be 82.
82. And so you were in your late 70s and Morgan was 15. And
Yep.
there was about what, four or five other folks who made up the core unit? Was that about right?
Yeah, it was something like that, and some of them came and went as part of their participation. They bring a specialty or
Yeah.
points of interest for us, and we get that going. And they drop in every once in a while, but there was a core group of 4 or 5 met pretty much regular basis.
Well, and I'll share the video in the final cut of the initial impetus of this founder who was the driver behind it. His name was Robert Brady. To give a little framing, Robert means a lot to all of us, but he's since passed away. He was a single amputee, I think, at the time. Then he was a double amputee, but he never complained. Was a hard worker, patented things. He was an engineer. And can you maybe describe? I think both of you there when Robert announced what his problem was, because Coffee and Concepts is a gathering where we get together people of all ages, 15-year-olds, 70-year-olds, and everybody in between. And we talk about innovation news, but then we have a portion where we say, hey, is anybody working on an idea, have a concept, have a need that we could all work together on? It's always about innovating or building a project or shipping something. And were you both there when Robert talked about it for his problem?
Yes, that was I think that was my very first coffee and concepts that I went to present an idea. And it was the
Okay.
exact same day that he also presented it. And they almost turned out to be identical products and projects. So his was a speech to text product for helping the deaf, and mine was a text to speech product for helping the blind and students with dyslexia and autism. So they ended up like working out perfectly. And we both shared a team member, Dr. Stephen Moss. And so we worked together very closely on the two projects because they were so similar, just opposite technologies.
Yeah. Do you remember how he introduced the problem? Do you remember this, or do you, Tom, at all? Because I remember it as clear as day. I have a video of it, which
Yeah,
we'll play for everybody.
I
Well, I'll tell
do,
my
and
version. I want to hear yours.
I think that yeah, I think that's part of his video where he explains what was the impetus behind why he got involved. And I think if I recall the story, it was because his folks were having a hard time communicating. I think primarily his dad uh, was having the hearing issues.
Yeah.
And he said he remembers them. They'd visit and he'd remember them fighting cats and dogs because he
Yeah.
couldn't understand what she was saying. And he said it got so bad that it came to a point that they were thinking about getting divorced. And I
Yeah.
think they were in their 70s at the
Yeah. It
time.
was like 70s or 80s. And
Yeah.
Robert, I remember most of us didn't know how old Robert was. And so when Robert said, my parents are about to get divorced, and then he was getting emotional, I remember all these like entrepreneurs and founders and people of all types in the room kind of feeling, I think this like not confusion, but like, huh? Of one, that Robert still has parents, and then two is that they were gonna get divorced and they were old, and it was like, well, why are they getting divorced? Everyone's like thinks, you get to a certain age, you just kind of ride that wave. And when he shared that they just yelled at each other all the time and they were mad, then all of a sudden, like you could just feel the outpouring of like, all right, let's come up with a solution together. What was the first action? I remember hands went up in the room of people who were like, I want to help. And the two of you becoming co-founders, what was the minimum viable product that you guys landed on of a solution to help a disabled man's deaf parents that he was already a senior citizen. They were like super senior citizens. And I love it because, here's a 70-year-old Tom and a 15-year-old Morgan. Tell me about the minimum viable product that you guys modeled to tackle.
So one of the things that I remember from our first outside meeting from Coffee and Concepts, we were at Terra Coffee on Government Way and had our first big group together. And I knew of a tool in Google Docs that was the text to speech. And so I showed that off on my phone. I was like, hey, look, this is definitely viable. We have something that's available. We just have to model and scale it from there. And that was one of the big moments of like, yes, this is possible. And it is, we just need to make it for the use case. And how do we narrow that down to the niche?
Yeah. And didn't it start to like move into the direction of screens in the home or something like that as like a concept as well? What was that like? Do you remember, Tom?
Well, I think uh, if I recall correctly, Robert had a demonstration that he showed us on the phone and what may the product may evolve to. And when he made the announcement at Coffee and Concepts, I had just started being involved with the organization. It was the national organization, Hearing Loss Association of America, and was trying to get information from them on, what's the newest technology.
Yeah.
And there were some out there already, like CapTel and some others that required a landline phone, and they would translate conversations from incoming calls to a screen so that the people could read it. And it was kind of along the lines of what Robert envisioned, but he wanted to have a more of a portable laptop notepad device that could be used.
Yeah. And doing it in the room instead of on the phone so that it could listen to the room. And I remember they wanted to do for his mom, wasn't it like pink words and then blue words for his dad or something like that? Do you remember this? I remember it was discussed that way. And like one of the Coffee and Concepts became a conversation of could you have different colored voice to text to solve for it. And for a lot of reasons, I love this because it was an exercise in one, his parents didn't end up getting divorced, and Robert was working on a solution and felt empowered uh, and continued to create intellectual property. But it also kind of coalesced people around a problem together in a community. And specifically, Tom, tell me a little bit about you talked about being in a hearing loss community because as you've been aging, struggling with your hearing. But what was your background, business wise, life wise, on top of it that you were able to bring to a community like that, as well as your connections in the hearing loss community?
Well, I kind of throughout my life have been involved with many small businesses, startups that I've done, but also was involved in the manufacturing industry as a production manager for electronics firm. So I brought a little bit of that to the table with me. Um,
Nice.
mostly the fact that for me it was very enjoyable joining with other like-minded people that thought this would be a good project to get involved with, and that's what Innovation Collective is all about. Something sparks your imagination, you just raise your hand and say, "Hey, I think I can help."
Yeah. Yeah. That you're ready to jump in. And to that point, did you ever get to talk with him about some of the manufacturing needs or maybe some of their thoughts from your perspective of being somebody who understood that Robert was more of a inventor, maybe onesie twosie single product kind of guy from most of the experience that I had with him. He'd come up with new ideas, patent it, invent it, keep going, try and license them, not scaled manufacturing. Did you provide any insight on what manufacturing was like from that perspective, Tom?
Yeah, I think the group kind of came to the realization that if this was to go to market, um, we'd have to rely on existing technology that was there rather than try to
Good.
um, invent a new handheld or laptop device. It would be something that could be easily integrated by downloading software to it.
Yeah, as opposed to building a
And,
tablet from the bottom up or ground up, some of
yeah,
the same thing.
yeah, we'd still be talking about it.
Yeah, yeah. And Morgan,
My
what?
my experience with that was that we had a saying when I was in manufacturing: shoot the engineer and let's get the thing to market. So that
That's funny.
that was kind of what I brought to the table.
Yeah. And Morgan, what did you get to bring to the table, or maybe even explore in yourself as a 15-year-old working with a bunch of other, folks on a project?
Yeah, I didn't have too much to bring at that time. I was just a young buck with a lot of energy, and we were working on the similar projects. And so I just was so excited to be part of a group and like working on something at the same time. Be like, oh, I can do something. I'll help out and be motivational at least. And so that was kind of where I ended up. But it was really cool to just learn from people who have really long-term experience and like things, how to scale it, how to start a company, the actual like technical sides of a business, because at that point I had nothing under my belt and I was just starting out. So they were all mentors at the same time for me of how do I get a company off the ground and how do I do a technology that's very similar to theirs.
That's awesome. And now fast forward, what's your career like? Because you're not 15 anymore. How old are you now?
I'm now 22, almost 23 at the time of this recording, and I'm working on trying to get into a PhD program in research. I found that I really enjoy working on like prototypes and stuff and just like coming up with ideas. And so it's kind of directed my life into getting into research where I can do that professionally, get paid well, and have some cool stuff under my belt. So this
Kind of
whole like system of creating products and ideas has led me to where I am today.
Yeah, what kind of research is like I love this.
So there's one is economics and understanding people. That's all from Build and that's like the main thing is like how do people create stuff and how do we inspire more people to create stuff? And so one of my most recent projects that's a paper under review right now is the propensity for job replacement by AI. And as somebody who's grown up in a community who really appreciates work and jobs and creating potential for people, that was something I really wanted to understand and create a legacy around of what are the actual impacts and how do we protect people before this happens. This should be something that we need to look at ahead of time rather than, oh, it's already happened, we lost a ton of jobs and we can't bring those back ever. So that's the view that I saw from it. And now as I'm applying to PhD programs, one of the things that I really have been enjoying is graph networks, relationship mapping, and how things work together. So during my career at University of Idaho, my first pitch competition product was a graph transformer network to predict where to put a business in relationship to other businesses based on their competition, information from Google, and it would compare the relationships to figure out what is the best and optimal place to put a company and form those relationships. So something from IC and just like working with people has just inspired me to find the empirical evidence to continue this and do research on it so we can figure out how to mathematically scale it and make it happen.
That's cool. I love that, Morgan. And from a journey, talk about the product cycle a little bit of what it got to and what that experience was like. And Tom, you mentioned some people would come in and then they'd leave and they'd come and go. And the reason why I ask this is there's the in the mindset of most people who want to build a startup or launch a company, it's I'm going to ship this thing and make a bunch of money. And then there's the social, civic, and economic power of helping people flex the creativity muscle and with agency, empowering you and your friends to try and tackle a meaningful product in a way that solves real issues in your own life, with your family, with people you love, but also looking at it from a market minded approach, asking for help from peers, and that it's almost a spiritual act of creating, and that dynamic of getting together a very clown car of co-founders, to be frank. A
Right.
15-year-old and a 70-year-old aren't often co-founding a company to help, 70-year-old angry married people who can't hear each other. And yet it's something that they stayed married. Robert worked on it forever and it went on this cycle. And so I want to talk about that journey a little bit, of like maybe the highs, the lows, the frustrations, if you have anything to add to that. Um, yeah, to that. But what are your perspectives?
Uh, I, I, I think it starts off with uh, the younger entrepreneur thinking, I've got this brilliant idea. I think I can make a lot of money. And over time, it evolves. And I think Robert was in this position. He realized that um, he was in his stage of life that he wanted to finish well. He wanted to give back to the community. Uh, some of the wisdom and knowledge he had amassed over the years, share that with other people, be a mentor. And but he had the realization also that if this is going to work, we need to have it as a profit center. We need to be making some money on it so it can support further growth. So I would say he approached it with a 50-50 concept. Let's just make this available as affordably as we can. Um, I think his real vision was, hopefully this will go out to the masses and will help solve the problem of keeping your parents from getting divorced.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I love. And I love the heart behind it. And team wise, Morgan, you were kind of a cheerleader, working on some social media stuff, helping drive forward a vision, finding maybe some new tech that you knew about, and then you had other folks knowing how to like open a bank account, like because it had a bank account, right? Like it had an LLC. It wasn't just let's talk about an idea. You guys took action, built prototypes. Did you ever ship the prototype at all, or where'd you get to?
Uh, there was a prototype that we had. We had it deployed to some care facilities, and I believe one person in the medical field that would help when a patient would come in for an appointment. Uh, they could actually speak into this tablet,
Yeah, I remember that.
and the doctor could also speak into it, and they could see the words that were being said. So if there was some hearing impairment, this kind of overcame it. So there was a beta run on it.
It's awesome. And how many years did you guys work on it? And then eventually Robert passed away and kind of, wrapped up the startup in some ways, because it was oddly, I think everyone got a lot out of it, I would assume. I think there's probably different things, but how many years was that?
I think we had two or three
Yeah.
um, before he passed away.
Yeah. What did you kind of take from it, Morgan? Maybe in reflecting on this, are there any moments or stories or things that kind of like stick with you from it?
I think one of them was it was first or second coffee and concepts that I ran as the community lead was one of the last times that Robert was there, and I believe he showed it off. And so that was around three to four-ish years since like the creation and the product and the original coffee and concepts meeting. And that something about that is always going to be locked in as like that was the last time that I got to see something amazing and with him from him. That was just so you and I have talked about this as like that's we saw him, and that was the last time that we got to see that thing keep going, and that it's just something that's like locked in me. I don't know how to describe the emotional feeling of it, but it's just something that is historic, I suppose, in my brain from now on out.
Yeah, it's I have this thinking I've been playing with for kind of the loop of our lifelong learning, and it's this concept that we have this listening phase, which is where we listen and we're observing, we're kind of intaking as much as we can, and then we go and try and launch. into this, like, we're going to launch a project, we're going to launch our career, we're going to launch from our listening, and there's always the liminal in between each phase, is like the kind of the gap where you're playing a little bit of both. And then you move into the leap phase, and leap phase is after you've launched. Sometimes you go back to listen a little bit, so then you can go like launch a new thing, but you're leaping forward, you're trying to take the jumps in your career. Then at some point you move into this, legacy phase of, I'm here to give back, I'm here to contribute, mentor, advise. And then you move into this capacity, which you don't really control, but it's when your body and your mind start shutting down on you. And if you've played your cards right, you move into that status of legend. And when I think about Robert, he's in that, legend category. And Tom, I look at you as this legacy of giving back, and you're taking time and listening to people still, and contributing and helping with nonprofits in town and startups in town. We missed you on our morning run, by the way. We had more people. Tom goes running with us. We run 5 miles and Tom walks too, and we meet him. We had more people came to walk with you today, so you got to come next time. But I think about Robert, and he, like, there's multiple people in our time of building these startup communities that have transcended in that legend status, and we've watched them go from, this leap maybe in their career to then legacy, then legend. And as I hear you talk, Morgan, I can't help but think about that loop where he's there. Like, he's a legend in my mind, of someone who was always the first to raise his hand to be like, I'm here to help you. And he'd help do hardware design, CAD design, help file patents. The guy was like just a patent filing machine. And he had a whole portfolio, and he'd always show up. Like, I remember he showed up one time with like a bike you could ride with your hands, or something that he's been building. Do you remember this? Because he was in a wheelchair and he had no legs. And it's like, the guy never whined. He was just the first to offer to help and give. I think culturally, there's like a spirit that makes this like collaborative mascot of what we're all trying to become. And Robert's a big part of that, I think, collaborative mascot. Tom, what did you maybe observe as you watched, a PhD physician, an engineer, yourself, some other folks, and then this 15-year-old kid who's like, I help, and you watch people form an LLC. And Morgan, that's the first LLC you're ever a part of, correct?
That was from where I started mine.
Yeah, and
Yep.
Right, and that's big on its own, right? But Tom, what did you see as you observed this this crew?
Well, that like I said, I've done a number of things in my career, and I've got 2 or 3 LLCs that I've put together over the years. A couple of them I've kept active just because I can do that. And one of the things that I've observed in my journey, regardless of age, or especially because of age, is people that we gather around uh, that may be retired within the Innovation Collective group. You can see, even though they're not actively involved in something, they're still passionate about it. They carry that even passion into retirement.
Yeah.
For me, when I get involved in a project, I'm still very passionate about it. That's just my DNA.
Yeah. Well,
I think if you can retain that as you go through life, even if it's a minor thing, just be passionate about it.
yeah. Yeah, I think people need to hold on to some form of deep, meaningful purpose that builds that, like, it's something that creates passion when they take action on it. And I also think it gives us pride in ourselves. Like, we like who we are. And in a time when not a lot of people like who they are, that's actually a big part of doing startups the right way, is building teams and products that reflect, I think, is what you're trying to ship going to add more beauty and value to the world. And I think a lot of times when we look at products that are out there, that can't be said that that's their primary mission or goal or mandate, nor or what they're contributing to the world. And when you get to be a part of something that reflects you, you can use your skills Tom, like you talk about, and stay in the game with some passion and some purpose. I know for myself, I feel good about myself. I like myself when I get to use my skills to help people build cool things and make a difference in the world. Um, any other actually, what did you guys do when the company shut down, when Robert died? What was the approach, Tom? Do you know?
It was very sudden.
Yeah.
Wasn't unexpected, but he had gone through the second amputation and it slowed him down a little, but not a whole lot.
Yeah.
But because of that, he had other health issues that started compounding. And when he did pass, the group got together and we said, he was really the driving force. We should probably disband this. We had some small amount of money that everybody had kicked into the pot to help with the day-to-day administrative type cost. We all voted to liquidate that account, give it to his wife, and just express our sympathy and just tell her what a great guy he was. So
Yeah,
just
that's awesome.
It wasn't anything formal.
Yeah, but but meaningful though. And I think a lot of times there's just a lot of I'm envisioning Morgan getting to be 15, participating in that kind of a dynamic with what would arguably be called mentors, but in a lot of ways being treated as a peer, and getting to participate in shutting a company down, being a part of the early days of it, but then watching it go through the cycle of the shutdown, transferring dollars back to a founder. Not a lot of companies operate with that kind of mentality of mission at its core, and it's okay to shut a company down. I think that's one of the other things. A lot of people think the only path is we've got to shoot the moon, dent the universe, change the world, and it won't go that way every time. It won't go that way most of the time. It actually will be the original quote. A lot of people misquote the original quote around startups that Elon Musk says. Elon Musk says, building a startup is like chewing on glass and staring into the abyss, which is funny. Like, building a company. And sometimes it's hard. It's not easy. But the original quote was actually a guy named Sean Parker. And he said, building a startup is like chewing on glass and learning to enjoy the taste of your own blood. And when you mix in, sometimes building startups is really hard. It's high stress. You're shipping and it's emotional. But when you mix in this legacy era of some folks, that have been already through it, they're maybe a little more financially okay. And there's a mission at this. What a cool introduction for someone that's 15 and other people who are in business to get to be a part of a thing like that to impact the world. Any other maybe things you observed or skills you picked up or things that you think are important? I know, Morgan, you got to go in a few minutes, and figure we'll give it another like 5 minutes ish, but anything else?
One thing, as you were talking about this, I was going through my emails because I still have all the emails from this project, which I'll send you some of those so you can check them out. And a lot of them are like, just keep trying new ideas to like make something work. So the first email was just a little about like, do we use walkie talkies or what kind of radio frequency we use? Is this going to be like a phone kind of thing? And then this one that I'm looking at right now is talking about using a Raspberry Pi, USB 2 buttons. They have an image of the project right here. It's pretty sweet. So just going through and like learning and like appreciating him as a legend. Like I remember his facial hair very well. Like that was part of his, like, he was a character. And I end off my emails with the word cheers because he started like and helped me with my very first like email. And so from there on, I always end with cheers because Robert did that. And it's just like really interesting to go through all these old emails and just like, we're going to keep going and we're going to keep trying stuff. And now this one's on Meet at GW Hunters, which burned down a few years ago. And it was 8 a.m. is our next meeting, August 9th, 2017. So there's some history here, and it's pretty awesome to just see, keep trying and keep building something to make it work if you're passionate about it.
Yeah, and it's okay not to know. Like iterate, and connect around it. So did I pick up appropriately too? He helped you create your first email?
Yes. Yep, that is correct. My very first one.
Right on, man. Right on. That's actually a big deal. It's funny you say that. So my son recently told me that he's interested in politics, Anderson. And Anderson's 14. And not that he's going to run for politics, but he's like interested in how human behavior works. And he knows I'm kind of involved in some meetings with different political figures and things globally. And look, I am proud to say I've passed state and city legislation, and recently we introduced federal legislation. And so, like, I'm kind of in the loop observing. And so I opened him up an email with the company. And so Anderson has a full-on email account now, but he has a fake name on there, and he's my policy analyst. And so I sent him documents, and he has like his signature line, but he gets documents, and he's in these threads with different people as like my policy analyst. And then I'm like, all right, what'd you think about that over dinner? And I haven't had him attend any meetings yet, but he has this fake name on there, and it's pretty funny. So if anybody watches this and notices some weird policy analyst, don't be too rough on him. 14. That's awesome. But it just reminds me, it makes me feel happy that, I got to be a part of building his first meaningful email and thinking about like that legacy that hopefully someday he's like, I remember that from my side. I never thought of it that way. I guess.
My battery's getting low, so I'm going to move over to the desk and plug in.
No sweat, Tom. You do that, and we'll wrap up in a few minutes.
I'm plugged in.
Oh, good. Well, Tom, any other kind of things, maybe like lessons or thoughts from the moments with Sir Brady and the Sea Talk? It was called the Sea Talk. I forgot about that. Yeah.
One of the things that really amazed me getting ready for this get together was going back over some of the notes and noticing how often the group communicated back and forth with, I just came across this interesting article, or here's somebody's developing something similar.
Yeah.
So I found a couple of apps that I hadn't seen or talked about for 4 or 5 years, and I revisited them. Technology has really come a long way. I've got a couple of them I downloaded this morning that I just can't wait to try out. But I think
Cool.
that goes back to the legacy aspect of it. Robert was the spark behind that, and there's still people like myself that are getting some information or wisdom as a result of that.
He's whispering to you from the beyond as you're going through the old notes, and it's there's a lot to it. Maybe as a way to kind of close things out here. Morgan, I know you said you'll send some of the images and sketches you have, and I'll put together some kind of a cool slide that we can have as like intros and outros, and we're going to patch in the video of Robert talking about when he pitched it at Coffee and Concepts, and knowing it was your first at 15, Morgan, that's awesome. But I can't help but think about, I have this belief about friends, and I think we've really screwed up friendship. And I think people think friendship is supposed to be like this. The ultimate friendship is unconditional love. I actually think friendship is this reciprocal loop of using and needing each other to build meaningful things together. And that, like, I need you and you need me. And it becomes immoral when I just take from you and I don't give. and it becomes deeply cool and moral when we're building something we're creating together, and especially if it can be our own product or project, or when we're doing it in a group where you're all communicating. Because look, you all didn't love each other unconditionally. The only people you should save that for is like your bloodline. And beyond that, there's this, we need to know how to hang out with our neighbors. Like people just don't know anymore. People don't know how to make friends. People don't know how to make, a connection, anything. And the best way is to raise your hand and be like, my parents are getting divorced. I'm sad. I don't have legs. I need help. I'm an inventor. What should we do, guys? I've got a crazy thought.
Yeah.
But like, he didn't come with an idea. He didn't come with an answer. He just came with like, I need help. And quickly, Morgan's sharing his thoughts and Tom's sharing his. And next thing you know, there's a crew. And when you guys look back on these emails, like you built deeply meaningful friendships that have shaped who you are today, not out of some unconditional love, but as strangers who had a shared need and then built something together and got benefit out of it. And I think there's a real lesson in there around project based living and sharing generously with our skills to each other as a way to, build a better world and build deeply meaningful friendships. Because that's what I see in this. It's not like Morgan, you went to like big brothers, big sisters. You're like, Tom, will you be my mentor? You just built something together. Yeah.
Anytime, man. Anytime.
Yeah, exactly. Little Morgan, come on over. We'll
There
build
was
a product.
another interesting
Please.
point when
I love it. Well, yeah, go ahead,
when
Tom.
Morgan brought up a thing about doing the AI stuff and doing the research on where to open a new business, and I just had a flashback to one of my businesses. The way I started it was I looked in the yellow pages to see what Spokane was doing that we weren't doing in Coeur d'Alene. That was my technology. I got to airport passenger transportation, and we didn't have one in Coeur d'Alene, so I started one. So
That's funny.
who needs AI?
You know what? Did you know that Ray Kroc? You know how he set up where to drop McDonald's? Do you guys know the story? He would drive, and then whenever he'd take his kids on road trips, and whenever they'd have to take a piss, he'd set up a McDonald's.
That's a great idea. That's a great way to figure it out.
Isn't that funny? Like
Yeah.
different ways. Hey Morgan, I know you got to go. Tom, I know this means a lot that you guys took time to do this and recap. I was just thinking a lot about this whole legacy kind of legend thing, and Robert was deep in my heart. And then one day I saw the two of you, and I was like, "Huh, there's a funny story." Co-founders is cool legacies and legends in the making. But I'm grateful to have watched the company you guys formed and the impact you both have had on a lot of people. And I really appreciate it a lot that you took time today, but also the work you guys do in the world. It means a lot.
I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you. And I'll end off with the very first email from the CTalk project was May 17th, 2017. And the last one for the launch was on April 13th, 2019 at 4:04 a.m. So it takes a while to build something, but you'll get there.
I love that, Morgan. That's perfect.
And thanks for pulling it all together, Nick. You do a great job with coming up with something that is in your mind, and you say, "Hey, I can make that happen." And look at the imaginations that you're influencing or helping to support every day around the world now. You've done a great job, and thanks for this get together.
Hey, I appreciate that, Tom. I like to think about it most as actually I'm just having fun. Like I get to hang out with my friends. I feel like we're kids. I feel like we're kids in the woods building forts together. Is how I feel about it, and it's the best. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
I wish you were more